Coming up, Dr. Doug Weiss is back at the table to give us principles for challenging men to overcome addiction and mature emotionally, spiritually, and sexually. The conversation starts now.
Real friends, loving, laughing, and learning together. Sharing stories, one life at a time. So grab a seat. Welcome to Joni Table Talk.
So you're supposed to be living your happily ever after, but the reality of sexual addiction has turned your world upside down. The good news is that there is hope. And today, Dr. Doug Weiss is here to share how you and your spouse can find freedom and healing. But first, joining me around the table is my dear friend, Cindy Johnston. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good, thank you.
You know, as a pastor's wife, I'm sure you hear about these kind of things going on in married couples' lives. I mean, it's happening in the world for sure, but even in the church.
It is, and it's heartbreaking, but I'm so thankful for shows like this that people will get some tools that will help them overcome.
Kendra Kelly Dean, same thing, pastor's wife. I mean, sexual addiction.
All the time, all the time. And you know, and the thing that I love about this guest, he's one of my favorites, is that he's just very honest about it. You don't leave a show with Doug thinking, did he mean? No, you know what he means. And I appreciate that.
And he has a good laugh.
He does. We love his laugh. It's so good. But I love him for that reason, you know?
Yeah, very direct, and you know exactly where you stand when you ask the question to Doug. Anna Kendall, you have counseled thousands of couples. This is an important topic, isn't it?
It's very important, and I love the way, I just echo what they say, I love the way Doug deals with issues like this, they've been needing them for years, and finally he's bringing them to light, and people are talking about these issues. I think it's wonderful.
Well, I know there have been couples down through the years I've sent to you and Fred to help, and then there have been couples we sent to Dr. Doug Weiss, and then you've even worked with some of the same couples.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's going to be really, really neat to hear his perspective on this. Cindy Murdoch, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
I mean, we're just inundated with
my goodness,
sexual addiction and so many things that have to do with sex, and the church virtually is silent on it.
Right. It is, and I was thinking, as you were introducing everyone, that now with social media, it's so easily accessible that it's probably beyond what we can actually comprehend how bad it is.
Well, Dr. Doug Weiss, welcome back to the table.
It's good to be here.
You've been here many times.
Yes, ma'am. Love being here.
So I'm really excited to get into this. I want to ask you the question, so how mature is your spouse? Many women and men walk into a marriage expecting their husbands or their wives to be mature, attentive, and connected. And then sexual addiction rears its ugly head. So what are we to do? Well, Dr. Weiss talks about this topic in his teaching series, When You Marry a Child, Don't Expect a Man Right Away. Can that work both ways?
Oh, absolutely.
So it could be the woman.
Rob you of immaturity, whether you're a man or a woman.
So people were saying, no, wait, women can have sexual addiction.
And alcohol or drugs, food, work, novels, social media. Oh, yeah, women can have addictions. They're good at it, too.
Yeah, so let's identify what is immature behavior. What does it look like in the context of what we're talking about right
When we talk about sexual addiction, what happens is any addiction process robs you of three major areas of development, okay? So what you do is you stop growing at the point the addiction actually starts being consistent. And that's, for most people with sex addiction, that's about 14 years old.
And what is sex addiction? Just define
sex addiction is when you're using sex or sexual behavior, okay, in a way to medicate your past, medicate your present, to avoid reality. But it becomes very seductive because the chemical rewards you get for a sexual release are so potent. And you attach that to an object or a fantasy or pornography, and off your sexual neuropathic development goes to attaching to the wrong thing. It doesn't attach to a soul, it attaches to a thing.
So is sexual addiction when a man or a woman are having multiple affairs and can't stop from doing that, or they're watching pornography and they can't stop doing that? But sex-related things where they just can't give up something that's ungodly.
Right, and they've tried, and they've promised, they've prayed, they've gone to church. Sometimes they've like, I can't break free. It's not like they want to be stuck.
Yeah.
And some of them really tried, but they need a team to get better. That's
Yeah.
what addiction, you can't do it by yourself.
So were you a sexual addict? Is
Oh,
that-
I was totally out of control. Alcohol,
Okay.
drugs, sex, you name it. And so teenage years, early young adulthood, and you know, when I met Christ, alcohol and drugs left, but sex addiction stayed. So, you know, being in Bible school, being a sex addict, that torments you. And I was really literally crying out to God, memorizing scripture, fasting and praying. I couldn't break it. And it wasn't until I started accountability where I started to break free. And that's
Was
been over
that
30
difficult
years.
for you to have the accountability to tell someone?
Well, it wasn't really up to me. I was like in my room, and God said, if you do X behavior, like be sexual with yourself, I want you to tell your roommate Paul. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. Come on.
One thing about doing it.
But see, I knew the voice of God versus the voice of the devil. I didn't rebuke Jesus. Like, you know, it's like, okay, that's
you had been
okay,
praying
yes,
and
sir.
asking,
I'll do what you
yeah.
tell me to do. That's our deal. And then I started, and I relapsed. I told my roommate, and I started.
And he
that
was a godly young
He was a
man.
godly man, yeah.
Okay.
He was both in seminary.
You want to be careful who you're sharing
Oh,
that
you
with.
so, yeah. You want to make sure the
yes.
person's mature. And he was, and, you know, it wasn't a big deal to him, but I felt like really bad. And but after a few times of that, it went away because the pain of telling him became greater than the pleasure of doing it.
Right.
So what about the pornography part? Because I know that was a huge addiction in your
Well,
life.
pornography kind of stopped in Bible school because of access. This is before the internet. This is before cell phones. So unless you went to go buy it,
Can you
know.
imagine having that in this day and
oh
time?
no, it's tragic that we're
Difficult.
putting this poison into all of our culture and all of our children. And we're letting them believe about object relationship sex and kind of crazy stuff and diminishing their sexuality. We have robbed our culture of the sacredness of sexuality. And then we expect them to act like adults.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an insane thing that we've got going on. But yeah, I have job security for sure. I mean, they're producing them way faster than we can help them.
Yeah, wow. You said something, Doug, so important when you said that the pain of change was not as great as the pain of continuing the addiction. Because change is painful, isn't it?
Change is painful, you know, and so you have to hit a place where you want to get better, and the pain of what you're doing isn't working anymore.
Right.
And so sometimes women marry these guys and they don't hit that place, you know, and sometimes the marriage is the first place where they actually start having pain.
So let's talk about some of the immature behavior that you talk about. Here's some immature
Sure, let's do it.
behavior and we're talking about men specifically because we've got all women at the table, but this could be both.
Could be both,
Right,
right?
absolutely.
But the DVD is a much better title. When you marry a child, don't expect a man right away.
No kidding.
Because women resonate with
Yes,
that right away.
yes.
They do. I mean, my
true.
clinical team, I was in a room together, and we were talking about something, and I mentioned this title, and they're like, all, I don't know, 15 of them in the room was like, yes,
That's
you
it.
have to do that, because our women who are married to addicts, you know, and that's what I work with a lot, they're like, I am married to a child. I've heard that for 30 years. So finally we put together When You Marry a Child, Don't Expect a Man Right Away, to explain what their experience, to give them language for why my 50-year-old throws a tantrum when I just say the word no.
Yeah,
You
okay,
know?
so immature behavior, spending money on prostitutes or other women, investing money without telling you, withholding sex, argumentative, and ignoring their wife. Those are all specific identifying factors of what an immature child looks like.
Yes. And also they don't pick up their clothes, and they expect you to do everything, and they're not adequate parents, and they're not there for you emotionally. So it goes on and on and on and on and on.
The wife is sitting here thinking, okay, I married you. You promised me you were going to be this husband for me. Why? Why are you acting this way? Can you kind of explain the why
when
behind?
you hit that point, I mean, there's a lot of women watching the show here, and that's the point they're at, Kendra. It's like, can you explain to me why my husband never grew up?
Yeah.
And so I have ladies, like I do conferences all over the country and world. I remember I was in Canada, and a lady says, my husband won't pray with me, he won't connect with me, and I said, well, go home, ask him how often he's looking at pornography and how often he's being sexual with himself, and then come back tomorrow and give me the answer. And she's like, I go,
What?
she did. He came back and he says, yeah, I've been, and he went through his story. And we had a revival breakout in that church because I told all the women to do that.
Wow.
At another place, at another time. But that was it. It's like, well, if your husband's acting immature and you feel like you're not married to a man, there is an addiction process. Now, you need to find out which one it is. But like, if it's food, you know.
Yeah.
Okay? If it's alcohol, you know.
Yes.
If it's workaholism, you know.
Yeah.
This one is you don't know. And so that's why you have to go ask. And then, yeah, I mean, it's a huge issue, and it's in the Christian world very much as it is in the secular world. You know, there's hope and healing. I mean, you can get well.
But how do you ask those questions to a husband that you feel is already immature without them feeling like you're attacking them or that
You can't control their feelings, Kendra.
But there are women who are watching who need to know. Like, give me an example. Like, how do I approach him about
The same way you would approach your son who is 14 years old and ask him about smoking pot.
Okay, yeah.
Did you smoke pot?
There you
You
go.
mean
Right.
direct?
Now, is that 14-year-old going to go and get all huffy? What were you doing in my room? Let's talk about that, right? So yes, it's going to be an awkward conversation. You hit it straight up and watch them kind of move around with it. And then say, okay, you answered my question by the way you're answering my question. Or the fact that you don't want to answer my question. So what are you going to do about what we both know exists inside of our marriage, that you're really married to this fantasy world and I get to do the dishes? Like, what are we going to do about that dynamic? And then get a man involved, because men make men.
It's very telling, though, that you feel that it would be very awkward. I mean, it's like, do you wait for the right time?
No, you just do it. You
just walk
do
in
it.
the door and go,
Band-Aid off.
I would
so
say-
are you watching pornography or are, I mean...
Oh, I've done it, you know, Cindy, I've been in churches like yours, okay? And I'd say, ladies, okay, it's Friday night. I'm going to talk to you guys tomorrow morning. So tonight's night. Go home and ask them how many times they're being sexual with themselves, how many times looking at pornography, and get the answer. I'll deal with it tomorrow.
Okay. So what are they supposed to do with this? So they're just not supposed to follow it up?
It blows it up. But I would say
it shines the light on it. That's
it
what
shines
you're
the light on
saying.
it, and some guys rise up, and some guys go for the darkness. But it at least gives them an opportunity to choose.
Yeah,
When
it's
you're
good.
complicit in silence, you're complicit with an addiction.
Yeah.
Addictions grow, so you being complicit is cooperation.
Wow.
And so you want to like stand up to it. But I would say before you do that, if you do have a moment, call your pastor and say, listen, I think this is going on. I'm going to ask him. And if it is going on, I'm turning him over to you.
That's good. Very good.
But you want to make sure that your pastor's clean before
So
you do
again,
that.
it's that whole question of accountability and shining
Absolutely.
the light on it. And if someone's watching and they're like, well, look, my wife doesn't know,
Oh,
my
they know.
pastor doesn't
They know.
or they're telling themselves, and I'm just, I can handle
Yeah.
this. The longer
no.
you try to handle it in the darkness, the worse it's going to get.
Worse it gets,
You
and-
tried to do that, right?
Yeah, but like I had a guy in my office, like just recently, and the situation was, you know, he was trying to handle it all by himself, the little self behavior and then the little porn behavior, and that grew into more stuff online. Then he started hooking up with some people, and it became this whole disastrous thing for his career. Just blew his life up, you know,
it
and
is-
so.
When we keep anything in darkness, it grows.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing when you shine the light on it, how fast you can
Things can
get over
die.
it. Yeah.
So going back to the process, so what do you tell these women? Because there's some specific things that they need to know if they're going through this process. Like the first thing you would say is know that this is not about you.
Right, I would
You
say
know?
it's not about you, it's not about your body, it's not about your sex, it's not about the house being clean, it's not about your wrinkle, it's not about the color of your hair. It has nothing to do with you. He was doing this neurological reinforcement probably a decade before he even lays eyes on you.
Yeah.
I think women need to hear that.
So
again.
Yes, you're not the
Because they
cause.
want to blame themselves.
Yes.
And say there's just
Well, that's
something
because
I'm
if they
not
can
doing.
blame themselves, they can control it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's true.
Okay, women like
Yeah, that's true.
control. You know,
Yeah.
some of them. And so it's like, okay, well, if I lose 5 pounds, then it will go away. No, that's bargaining.
And they live in shame.
So it's like, okay, no, he was sick before you got him. It has nothing to do with you. Now, you want to ask about it and start dealing with it together. We have groups for spouses. We have groups for the guys. There's phone groups. There's all kinds of support. Nobody has to be sick anymore.
But that's just like men saying, well, I've got this pornography problem. That's because I'm not married. But as soon as I get married, I know it's going to go away.
No, that
That's
doesn't
another
go
lie.
away. It just gets crazier.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes underground.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a real problem.
Wow.
So what about grief? You talked about women who have to go through a grieving process.
Well, now in the video, when you marry a man, and when you marry a child, don't expect the man. They got to grieve that.
Okay.
They got to grieve that
'Cause
they
it's
don't
a
have
loss,
a man.
isn't it?
It's a permanent loss for that period of time. So if you're married 20 years, you've lost 20 years of a mature man, and you can't change that.
So would there be times when you have that loss that you during that grieving that you have
Bad
a
day.
separation or a time?
Well, you don't need to, but sometimes you do. If the guy's not changing,
Yeah.
you do. If he's like, you know what, I got to deal with this. Yes, I'm reading, I'm going to group, I'm doing accountability, I'm
That's
killing it.
different than
That's
someone
a man.
saying
Right.
That's right.
denial.
But the guy is like, no, everybody does it. I know everybody does it, and it's just a little thing, and it doesn't bother us. And yeah, it doesn't bother you
Then
because
you might have
you're
to
the person
consider a
sucking your thumb.
separation, right?
Wow.
I would consider boundaries first. That separation would be a little further down the road, but I would do the separation only under the accountability of your pastor or male counselor.
Yeah.
And for the
And I'm not
purpose of
opposed to female
hopefully,
counselors, but men make men.
yeah.
So how do you help a wife if she's over-functioning?
Well,
in
she's
all
going to
of this?
overfunction because if you're married to a child, you're doing more in the marriage and in the family than your husband all the time. More of the laundry. See, I'm a man, so
That would be
I do
exhausting.
laundry
Yeah,
and
all of that.
dishes, and I
Yeah.
take out the trash. I mean, I'm a man. It's my domain.
Can we all
and I'm
clap for him?
responsible.
Yes.
Okay.
Because
My
it is
husband
like
does that
having
too.
a child.
And I teach men how to be men. There's a whole thing, how to really love a woman. It's like, I don't know, 9 hours long on how to be a man. Because men, to be fair to men, men aren't raising men anymore.
That's true.
Okay, so they're not getting the role model.
And a lot of men
this.
don't even have men in their life or
They don't have a
fathers.
role model at all. And it's not something, I mean, well, anyway, so
That's another whole
a
program.
whole nother program, a whole nother thing. But, you know, there's hope for men who want to mature, you know, but if you're to your point, Cindy, you are over-functioning. And if you feel that you're over-functioning and you're doing everything, and he's really not helping, and all he does is go to work and come home and watch TV or sit on his phone, you're not married to a man, you're married to a child. A man comes home and goes, what needs to get done, let me get it done, and I don't need to be told what to be done, okay?
Is this,
easy.
I mean, I could talk with all of us here, I think, but I know that's got to be resonating with you in your first marriage. Because, I mean, I was with you in your 20s, all through your 20s and partially 30s, and she would do everything.
Well, then you need, that's what this video is for. If you marry a child, and if you, it's like, he doesn't pick up after himself, he doesn't cook, he doesn't know how to clean, he probably couldn't tell you what we need for grocery, like, come on.
Right.
I mean, I'm a busy guy. I'm a very busy guy.
I remember one
Okay,
time we were having
seriously.
dinner, and she had cooked this meal and had a new baby, was carrying the baby attached to her side, and trying to set the table, and I was trying to help her in there. I had just found out I was pregnant with Jonathan, and we sit down to eat. She's got the baby. She's this great meal, and her husband says, "Cindy, you did not cut the corn off my cob." And she's like, "Oh," and she gets up and goes around.
That'd be a Cobb moment, boy.
Yes.
Here, open your mouth. I'll help you with that.
But she was trying to save her
Wow.
marriage. weren't
And it
you?
was, well, it's the overfunctioning, and it's that part of feeling like if I'm not all of this,
Yeah.
the marriage can't be
And that's
saved.
such a
If I'm
lie,
not
the enemy.
That's a lie, yeah.
And Doug, this
Wow.
could be a
That's a
situation
whole
where,
nother level.
where the man is not addicted to anything. He's just immature and doesn't help.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would
So-
say that that's probably not the truth.
Really?
Because without addiction, you naturally develop.
That's so good to hear.
Okay, spiritually, emotionally, and morally. You
Okay.
naturally develop.
Okay.
There's something.
It is abnormal
holding them back.
not to develop.
Okay.
And I just
So-
want to say,
So
because
good to
I
hear.
outed Cindy over here, because we've been friends for 35 years. She
Let me
now-
out you and you and you, okay?
That's your turn.
Everybody get ready.
I'm coming your way. I'm coming your way. And I'll out myself as well. But I was going to say, you're now married to an incredible
Oh, my goodness.
man of God who does everything.
he-
It's such a blessing.
I agree with him 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Cindy asked me a question, say, well, that's exactly what my husband said. Yeah. I said, that's because he's a man. He gets it.
Oh, I just sent David a text this morning, actually, and I was just thanking him of his thoughtfulness and his kindness, and if I'm busy, how he just picks
it
up
up.
and takes
Totally.
takes
Gets it done.
on with it and adores me.
You know, and I'm going to out myself, I think on the next show we do, on some things that really the Lord had to deal with me about. But anything like personal y'all want to share about your story that would help people?
Well,
We'll start with you, Anna.
start with me. Which part of the story do you think would help?
What I wish I'd had is a woman of God, a woman in my life that would have helped me understand
say, what
what
are
is
you
permissible
doing?
and what's
Yeah.
not.
We were we were separated for a season at a time.
Joni
when
probably would've.
a lot of this stuff, because I would have been like, "What are you doing?" Because even that night, I said to her privately, "What are you doing? This is
Totally.
crazy." You know.
Totally.
I loved his idea. Put the corn cob in his mouth.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which part of my story?
I don't
do
know,
you think?
Kendra, you jump
So
in.
I would say that, you know, whenever we first got married, we were both very immature, but he was more mature. No, I'm kidding. No, he was.
No, I was going to say that
But
y'all really both were.
Yeah, we both really were. And there was this fear of who do we talk to? Kind of like what Cindy was saying.
Yeah, 'cause then you
Who's
expose it.
safe to talk to about this?
That's
Who
fair.
can I trust?
You're both in ministry.
Right, we're both in ministry. And I would say that I added to the problem by being over controlling and by becoming his mom.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
If you
and,
feel like
and
your
talk
mom,
about
that's a
that
big
for a
deal.
moment. You know, how do you get, as a woman and a wife, how do you get out of that cycle? Because when you're controlling it, you're only making the problem worse.
You're
not
being
in
the
control.
mom.
You're reinforcing the mom role.
Yeah.
And so you want to, that's where you really want to say, you know what, you need to talk to a man. This is a man thing. You need to grow up, get a man in your life, and let's start talking. Or we'll go together if you need mommy to hold your hand. Yeah, and if they do that, they grow up.
Praise God.
He did.
I love my husband.
He's a man today.
Yes, he is. So
Yeah.
does he?
And so,
That's
but
awesome.
that gives hope to people who are watching and understand. So many times you watch us and you think, oh, they just are, you know,
Perfect.
they're so perfect. And we're all of us are so
Oh, my
imperfect.
goodness, yeah.
And
So
we've all
true.
had
You mean
struggles.
I have not always had a perfect marriage?
So, but anyway, anything you want to share? Cindy?
Something that was enlightening to me was that control is an illusion, and that's been an issue. Saying, you know, "Mommy dearest," I mean, you saying you control, same thing, thinking that if I controlled it, then everything would be okay.
Sure.
Let me tell you about the race that Fred and I had when we were first married. He had this fear of losing control, and I had this fear of being controlled. So I ran and he chased, and I ran and he chased.
That's a dangerous scenario right there.
It did get very difficult there for a while.
So the funny story I love to tell about Fred and I've told it 100 times. They've told it 1,000,000 times. But it was we knew there was trouble in paradise when after they were married and after the honeymoon, they came home and Fred made a list and it said,
Yes, he woke me up. 0500, what the list says. 0500, wake up. 0510, coffee, and he had coffee perking there, and he had little rolls. And then it was like 0515, sex. And then I'll have to say, well, maybe it's 0520,
Cigarette.
It was a little bit longer than that. Let's say 0545, calisthenics, and then shower, and then I was to fix breakfast. And
I would have done the calisthenics first. But
well, then, there you go. Then I looked at him, I looked at this list, and I said, you got to be kidding. Threw it over my shoulder and went back to sleep. That was when he knew we had a challenge.
Yeah. Wow.
that's really something.
But he was, you know,
That's the paradigms. You know, you
he
have
was
different
Major
paradigms.
Dad. He was in the Marine Corps, you know, and he was used to people, you know.
What was so interesting is that a lot of times we marry people who are different than us, and that's what
the only option.
What attracts us. I mean, but here Fred was in the military, and he marries this vivacious, fun,
Free spirit.
But then he tries to control her after they get married.
like
How
an
many
army
times do you
general.
see that where
lot.
they say, well, if she could change or if he could change, we could
I'd
be
be
happy,
happy.
and they want to make them like themselves.
Well, you can't if you can't make yourself happy. I mean, seriously, it's not the other person doesn't have the power to make you happy. And it's not
your
their job
choice,
to make
yeah.
to make you happy. You know, if someone in my life's not happy, it's like
And,
sad
you know,
for you.
For the last 40 years, we've been incredibly happy, but those first 10 were a real challenge. Actually, 7 of them were, which resulted in me finally filing for divorce and separating. And I was absolutely convinced that Fred was the source of my problems. And it was a real realization to realize, actually, I was the source of our problems.
There you go.
And that was a big step for me to realize that and be willing to do something
Pretty
about
mature.
it.
Yeah, it's pretty
So-
mature.
For a while.
So you talk about, you know, if you want them to develop maturity, one of the biggest things that is part of that is trust. So how do you go about building trust in a marriage with someone who is learning to mature in this area, and why is that so important?
But again, women who have gone through the child years with their adolescents, with their children, have done this. Because most kids lie, most kids do dumb things, and most kids break your heart at some point doing something not honoring, let's say.
Even the very
I'm
best
talking about
of
the
kids.
best of kids. I'm talking about the best of kids, okay?
Right.
All except to Dassa.
And
She's
so
in the studio today. I know she never did anything.
She's actually an incredible kid, so it's great. She's got a lot of her mom in her, which is really, really helpful. Okay. So anyway, but you know, you've done it. if you have that experience with your teenagers, and you have with your husband, it's the same thing if he's a child. It's like, okay, let's give you some responsibility, see how you do with that, move through, and you don't expect it all at once,
Yeah.
and you kind of incrementally go through one step at a time, and you take you're just patient with some things. But again, the fastest road is to get a man in there, because men can call you. I've had ladies in my office married 20, 30, 40, 50 years, putting up with stuff, and I just look at them and say, that's ridiculous. Grow up. You shouldn't treat anybody like that.
Yeah.
You don't pick up your own towel. I talked about a guy on a towel the other week. You don't pick up your own towel. And he thought, what? You're supposed to pick up your towel? I go, she is not your slave. And if you treat her as a slave, the father-in-law God, he will not bless your life. You don't treat women like slaves and expect God to bless you.
Exactly.
Period.
Wow.
He had a come to Jesus moment.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, seriously, you're 40 years old and you can't pick up a towel?
Yeah.
But you were saying it man to man.
Well, she was sitting right there, and she's like, yeah. I could tell. She didn't say anything. She was
But inside.
just letting me minister.
Yes, that's
But you could tell inside, she's like, did you understand what he said to you? Like, you couldn't understand what I said, right? But he definitely got it, because over the week, he just manned up.
Wow.
And he's just
so
like,
awesome.
yeah. And sometimes it just takes a man to say, that's ridiculous.
Yes.
That's attractive to a woman, too.
It
when
really
a
is.
man is being a man and acknowledging.
Well, real men surround themselves
Or-
with men. I have a group of men, CEOs, we've been meeting for almost 19 years now. And we bring issues up to each other, and we will call each other out and up, and it's like, yeah, that's what men do. They surround themselves with men.
So I know that you're expanding, and of course you're there in Colorado Springs, but like for people who are watching, is like, is there somewhere I could call if I could get more information?
Sure, they could go to drdugweiss.com, and the materials there, the video we're talking about, when you marry a child, don't expect a man right away, and all kinds of resources. And the phone number is 719-278-3708.
Yeah, and we've got that on the screen right now.
Share questions. We do telephone counseling. We do intensives. So even if you're in the middle of somewhere, you can talk to a godly counselor and see what the next steps are for you.
Well, sexual addiction is a harsh reality that many marriages face, but your husband can mature if he's willing. Yeah. And you can have a marriage better than you've ever imagined. But remember, it's a process. It will take work and a lot of prayer. Today, if you're watching and your marriage is struggling, maybe your spouse is dealing with addiction, well, I want you to know we're here for you. There's a toll-free number on the screen. We have prayer partners that are standing by 24 hours a day. It's just, I don't know, maybe taking that first step and shining the light on what's going on. And then, of course, you can send in your prayer requests by going to daystar.com and clicking on prayer. I want you to know we pray over all the prayer requests that come in. I also want to thank our dear friend, Dr. Doug Weiss, for joining us. I hope you found today's talk helpful. Be sure to pick up a copy of his teaching. When you marry a child, don't expect a man right away. It's available now. And for more resources, again, you can visit him online at drdugweiss.com. I know that he would love to see you get the help you need. Also, remember to join the conversation online by leaving us a comment on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. We always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching. I know this is a difficult subject. I pray that you've been helped, you've been encouraged somehow to start going that direction that you need to go so that your marriage can be all that God intended it to be. We love you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Dr. Weiss.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for today.
This has been a Daystar television production.